All right, so everybody's wondering, has the restaurant industry hit its peak? Has it been put in a position that maybe is changed forever? I'm gonna get a chance to break down this very topic today in my Market Movers session here on the Barron Report. My name is Paul Barron, and of course, welcome back here to the show. One thing that we do, or I try to do here on the show, is really dive into research from time to time. And it usually is caused because of particular things that are happening in the markets. And the markets, when I say market mover, these are specific scenarios that have kind of put the restaurant industry in a place where if you're watching the chess pieces that are moving around the industry right now and understand some of the data that's supporting what is happening in the restaurant industry, you might be in for a surprise here on today's episode. So stick around for that. Before we get started, I do want to mention the Fast Casual Global event. It is going to be absolutely amazing. You can visit fastcasualglobal.com, click on the registration link if you'd like to join that group, but also you can click on the event link there and get free access to our event on February 23rd. We will have more events throughout the year, but this is going to be a big one. It's several sessions with some of the best fast casual leaders in the world, so you don't want to miss that one. All right, so let's jump to market moves for today. And I know the lower third you're watching right there going, oh, there's no way that the restaurant industry hits a 1.3 trillion by 2023. I mean, that's 3 years away. Here we are in the beginning of 21. We've got a lot to do before we can get there, but I think there's some things that are happening that to me start to telegraph a little bit about what some of the larger companies are thinking about the restaurant space. And this is an argument that I get into with a lot of different analysts from time to time, that they're concerned that the big companies are putting too much into the restaurant industry, and that risk to be able to mitigate the risk that we're seeing because of the amount of failures and problems in the restaurant industry that we're seeing. If you look at this first little slide here, Uber acquiring Drizzly. Drizzly is an interesting company because they are an alcohol delivery system. They do work directly with retailers to where you can kind of expand your online presence through Drizzly, so you're kind of selling through Drizzly for delivery, but they also go direct. And this is a very interesting alliance, because if you think about Uber, Uber does not have a direct model because they don't have the systems in place to go direct from a restaurant system directly to consumer. They're going through the retailers, being restaurants, to get to that point. And that's where I think this strategy that Uber is in the midst of, I think they have played their hand. They've continued to show that they are interested in getting deeper into vertical integration in the restaurant industry. And for me, when you look at Uber and what they're trying to do, and we'll break down a little bit about why and what is happening in Uber. And matter of fact, we'll have another episode on where I think delivery is going and why, and Uber is a big part of that. But the point is, when Uber makes these kind of moves with a technology like Drizzly, because this is a technology, and it's also an understanding, because they are getting a tremendous amount of learnings from the Drizzly team. And eventually, the way I understand the acquisition is this is going to be part of the Uber Eats app, to where you'll be able to buy or order both food and drinks and cocktails and all that kind of stuff directly within the app. Eventually, it's going to be integrated, but Drizzly will still have a standalone, so you'll be able to order full packaged goods and all that. But the point being is that if you look at how Uber's vertical integration strategy is going, I'd love to see their roadmap, because I think that vertical integration is the route that Uber is eventually going to have to take to be able to make a ton of money in this space and be able to get their position back in a very positive way. So that's a market move, number one, that I think you have to watch when you have companies like Uber and the companies behind them like SoftBank, who are supporting and going after the retail consumer. There is a lot of science here that says we are set for possibly an explosion. Any kind of modern day market is you buy low and you sell high. Well, the restaurant industry right now, in my opinion, has undervalued by a dramatic amount because of the amount of hits it's taken in PR and what has happened over the past 12 months. But even more importantly, the number of closures we've had. This is setting up the restaurant industry. For a lot of people, they look at this, that it was setting up the restaurant industry for implosion. I disagree. I think this is setting up the restaurant industry for explosion in terms of growth. And I'll break this down. My next market move here is the one with Beebot. Now, this is a small company, and most people would not even catch this on their radar in major funding rounds or in what's happening. But what I want you to pay attention to is Rally Ventures. Rally Ventures is the company that is putting money into Beebot, which essentially is, they want to be kind of the new Stripe for the restaurant business. If you don't know who Stripe is, it's basically a credit card processing system. Most likely you've integrated that in your online and e-commerce system for quick pay. But Rally is putting a significant amount of money behind small seed round investments like this in food tech, restaurant tech. Rally does not make bad investments. If you look at Rally, just go to their portfolio, take a look at the roster of clients and companies that they're taking out, including the ones that they're going IPO with. This company knows what they're doing. If they are going out into small tech in the restaurant space, this is a leading indicator. This is something that, because you have to have the market there to be able to have that kind of investment, to be able to recoup that. And I think that what we are seeing in the tech space is a great indicator of what a lot of investment firms, as well as analysts and also science and study behind where the restaurant industry is moving, is very important. Because if there's money going into that sector, that means there's expected revenue on the other side, and that's going to come either direct to consumer or through the restaurant channel. So market drivers are kind of where this moves. And I want you to kind of look at this slide right here, because this is one is really kind of where it breaks down. Tech investment has increased 120% over pre-COVID data. So that's a massive, obvious thing. But at the same time, many people were kind of questioning whether you should be putting money into companies during all of this, at least that were restaurant focused. Consumer demand on food away from restaurant. Now, notice the statement here. I'm saying it's not food away from home, it's food away from restaurant. Most of the data that you're seeing out in the industry is food away from home. In fact, the National Restaurant Association in 2019 reported that food away from home had just clipped over 51 or 50%, which was the first time in the history of the industry that over half the meals being eaten were done from restaurants or at restaurants and away from home. That, of course, has flipped upside down now. And if you look at the rest of this data, from restaurants, 320% increase estimated to maintain in a much larger market share. And I'll talk to you about why that is. Less direct competition because we've seen so many closures. More ghost and virtual brands will start to fill in the pipeline there. And then also, we are going to see a major third-party and last-mile delivery shift. If you look here on this data from Incisive, this was published sometime, it was a little bit over a year ago, but Incisive basically was looking at that their survey, more than half of restaurant sales will be digital by 2025. This has been flipped upside down. We think this is going to go into the 70, possibly 80% range of some of the fast growers and fast movers in the restaurant industry. And I know that there are many of you out there right now that are saying, listen, the restaurant industry is going to go back to full insert in dining. We're going to see that. Yes, we are. But remember that the core markets that were impacted most by COVID were full-service dining, casual dining, all of which typically are going the direction of in-restaurant, experiences. Fast casual, QSR, they are already in full remodel mode and are ready for what I think is about to happen for the restaurant industry, and that is a huge amount of growth. I want you to look at this next group. This is forward indicators that basically I'm looking at. U.S. closures, we're estimating for 2021 through 2021, which will be about 18 months in, or actually almost 22 months in running impact on the industry. We think that that's going to hit somewhere around 200,000 restaurants. And if you look at the industry, in 2019, we reported that we had about 880,000 restaurants. So you can see that was a massive dent. And when I say restaurants, food service establishments, this is bars, hotels, restaurants of all sorts. This is a pretty significant number that we'll see between by the end of 2021. So Q1, 2, 3, 4 we're gonna continue to see that happen in terms of restaurants still trying to hit recovery. Now, here's the interesting part of this on the forward indicator is the frequency number has dramatically increased. This is frequency of takeout and delivery. In 2019, this was about 4.1 times per month on consumers that were active in delivery and takeout. This is from our Foodable Labs data. Now that is up to over almost 8 times a month. Now, obviously, everybody knows, well, you're stuck at home. You don't really have a choice. You can't go out to eat. Of course, it's going to increase. The point is that this is retraining the American consumer. And there are many analysts, psychologists, consumer science experts. There's a lot of people, including operators, that believe this is here to stay. And if it is, this is where I think we're going with the restaurant industry. What you see over here on the right section of the screen are my estimates based on some of the growth that we're seeing. And this is total restaurant and ghost kitchens. Now, this is restaurant plus ghost kitchen estimates. By 2022, we'll be at about 490,000 restaurants that we'll be tracking, about 550,000 by 23, 633. By 24, 789 by 25, and by 26, will be upwards of about 900,000, over 900,000, which would be more than what we had in 2019. So it will take some time for us to get back up to the quantity of restaurants. What the difference is that we've retrained our consumers so much that COVID and what's happened in the past 22 months, when you have at the end of 2021, is that we have potentially reset the slate of how consumers are eating. And I remember back in the 2008, 2010 period when fast casual was kind of resetting the slate of how consumers were eating from a healthy standpoint. I believe this is a bigger movement that is really going to be pushing in terms of the amount of dollars being spent in the restaurant space and the percentage of available meal occasions that are going to advance the industry in a much bigger way. So on forward indicators here, one thing that you have to look at is what's the total restaurant potential population? We have over 300 million in the US. About 221 million are active restaurant participants, industry participants. So they're eating out, they're getting takeout. That's a fairly good and fixed number that we don't think is going to grow too much, but it does take into effect the consideration of the aging boomers and the shift in Generation Z and Generation Y in terms of taking over and kind of how they integrate, which also plays into the whole online ordering and convenience factor, the spreading of the day part. All of this is happening right now. We've been watching it. I think a lot of brands have been preparing for it, and of course now the acceleration of it along with the tech moves has really put this industry, I think, in a very good place. If you look at the total food occasions per year on Max Market, it estimates out at about $241 billion on where we see the potential of people going. And that's at about, by 2023, we estimate around 58% food away from restaurant. Now, 58% consistent business away from restaurant. If we look at the 2023 industry capacity and we look at how much is going to be done in terms of the restaurant industry, in terms of activity from these consumers, even at a $9.61 check, average check, and I believe that's probably a very low and conservative number because takeout tends to trend higher in terms of the average check. So it'll be interesting. We don't have enough data on that to really get an average check with what we're seeing now in terms of frequency. But even at the 961, which is mostly looked at from data that's in restaurant dining on average, and that's going all the way down to QSR up to fine dine, this puts the industry at $1.3 trillion by 2023. So if you look at this, it weighs the fact that we've lost 200,000 restaurants. It weighs the fact that our increase of food away from restaurant has actually increased dramatically. So the competition is going to be less, the frequency is going to be higher, and we're going to see more transactions and more occasions from a larger base of consumers that are pouring into the market, especially in the millennial group, because of their adaptation to technology, and because most of this is going to be through technology products, as I showed or talked to you early in the show about with what was happening with Uber, Drizzly, and the likes of Beebot and these investment firms. So when you take all of that into consideration, it basically says the restaurant industry pie is just going to get a whole lot bigger versus people eating at home with and through other methods. The restaurant functionality through convenience, tech, and also price points is going to reposition this industry for a $1.3 trillion industry, which if you look at where we were in 2019, in basically just clipping over $1 trillion in total sales for the restaurant industry, this would be a massive success for what we're going to see coming for the restaurant industry. So for all of the restaurant operators that are out there right now that have made it through this, there is a silver lining, I think, in what's happening right now. If you can hold on and you can get ready for the tech onslaught that we're going to see, and also the shift and continued shift in consumer dining habits, we are in for what I think could be another golden age of the restaurant industry in terms of growth in sales. And of course, this is going to come from a lot of new brands that are going to basically backfill that pipe of the loss of so many thousands of restaurants that we had in 2020 and what we'll have in 2021. So it's going to be an interesting time. I think this is going to be something we will continue to really analyze on a very micro level. There's a lot of activity in the market right now. I'll try to do these market movers more often so we can kind of break down some of the data and also some of the analysis that we're doing. If you are listening to this show on the podcast, make sure and leave a rating. That's how we get great feedback from you. And if you have an idea of maybe someone you'd like to have on the Barron Report, just shoot us an email to producer@foodabletv.com. You can hit me up on Twitter. We'll catch you next time right here on the Barron Report.